Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Such.
And my name is James.
And we have another lockdown special. We're going to be talking about Project Restart and all of that stuff. But we're off the back of a nice 3-day bank holiday weekend, James. It was all right, wasn't it?
Can you clarify for simpletons like me what that geezer said last night?
He didn't say anything. Yeah. He didn't say anything.
So, from being in a position where I think this time last week, you and I really thought we'd know what was going to happen. We're no closer, are we?
No, not at all, to be honest. I mean, there were some interesting facts that came out of it. Firstly, they're phasing back school in waves. So for someone like me, my youngest is in year 1, my eldest is in year 3. So according to his plan, if all goes to plan, 1st of June, one of them will be going back to school, the other one won't. I think it's interesting that they're sending the little ones back in more than the older kids, starting with reception. I'll be honest with you, in reception, all they do is play and paint, and they don't really do anything that's like massively educational. So I'm surprised.
Sounds like a night out for me.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they're not starting with the slightly older kids, but I'm sure there's some logical reasoning behind it. And the restaurants and cafes and bars, man, I honestly thought they would be opening up a little bit sooner, but that's definitely not until July, based on what he was saying.
Where does it leave football, mate?
All right, so I think the announcements from Boris are less relevant to where we stand with football. I think the news from Brighton, the news from Dresden, is actually what has more of an impact on football. Because one of the things you've been saying from the beginning, and I've agreed with you, but maybe not really been as convinced by the impact, is what if there is another little spike or one team get it? And now that one team has, like Brighton have got 3 cases, and I'm not even going to say allegedly because I think it's taking the piss if you...
No, it's real. It's real. I'm not having that.
Exactly.
It's real. Because they'll get asked
100%.
for proof anyway. They'll have to tell the Premier League who the player is.
Of course. They'll have to have test results. So now seeing it, and then Sergio Aguero was on the BBC website saying that all the players are scared about restarting football. I think that the likelihood that we're going to restart and finish the season is dwindling away rapidly. Not only that, I mean, all the clubs have said that they want to finish the season, right? That's the breaking news on the Sky Sports website that you highlight. They want to finish the season, but the majority of the clubs in the lower half of the table don't want relegation. Well, I'm afraid you can't have your cake and eat it. If we're going to finish the season, you've got to take what comes and you've got to be relegated. And if you want to avoid relegation, then we have to avoid the season.
It's exactly what I said last week, that if relegation is taken out of this equation, we might as well not just come back at all.
Yeah.
Because what are we going back to watch? We're going back to watch Chelsea try and finish top 4 against Manchester United, with Sheffield United and Wolves trying to cling on to that as well. But essentially, we'd come back and play football, and if Chelsea perform well, the rest of what the other 19 teams do is nearly irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I realise Wolves and Sheffield United fans would be screaming, going, well, we're fighting for the Europa League and that. The other teams going for it, Tottenham, Arsenal, etc., couldn't give a monkey's really if they're in the Europa or not. A lot would actually prefer probably not to be in it. I would want to be in it, but then I don't even think European football should happen next season. So is that even a possibility? We'd be going back for Chelsea trying to finish 4th, and we can't even have European football next season anyway. So what is the point?
I don't know if you'll remember from Boris's speech yesterday as well, that he said that the time is coming where anybody that enters the country will have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks. So European football involves travelling overseas. Surprise, surprise. Yep. So what, how many fans would you take to an away game, Tottenham in Europe? 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000 sometimes?
It depends on the game, doesn't it? Depends
exactly.
where.
It can easily be 5,000 or 6,000, right?
I mean, we had about 10,000 out in Amsterdam, mate.
Exactly. You want to quarantine all of them on the way back?
Exactly.
Well, to be honest, mate, I think quarantining all
just to clarify,
million of you Spurs fans is probably a good idea.
About 7,000 in Amsterdam without a ticket, by the way.
Yeah.
We only had an allocation of like 2,500. I mean, how many Liverpool fans were in Madrid for the final? It was 100,000, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I'm sure Spurs wasn't far off.
So if international travel results in you being quarantined, then clearly there's going to be no European football. I saw our Wolves correspondent, Bradley Parker, if you don't follow him, at Parker_Bradley on Twitter, saying that he'd heard rumours that the Olympiacos game was on the 6th of August and the final was scheduled for the 23rd of August by UEFA, and potentially that meant that all domestic leagues have to get finished first and then European football starts. I just don't see it restarting and being finished by the end of July. I can't see it.
Well, some are giving themselves a good chance, like the Bundesliga, who now their second division can't start with all the teams because Dresden have gone into quarantine for 2 weeks. And then what happens if that case happens again with another club? Yeah, are you going to ask Dresden, for example, to play every 2 days to make it happen, for example? I think the play in Europe in August was always the idea. I think probably Bradley wasn't aware in terms of if that Olympiacos fixture was going to be prioritised or if they were going to do it all at the end. I think it's always looked like the case that the UEFA competition would happen at the end. But as you say, so that second leg, Wolves obviously drew in Greece in the first leg. The second leg was obviously meant to be at Molineux. So then the first case is, if it's in England, could it be at Molineux? I would suspect from my experiences of going to Molineux that Molineux is probably one of the stadiums that would not be allowed to host games, I would think.
Yep.
And so then it's got to be played somewhere else in England. You've just said about the Olympiacos players having to be quarantined. So have they got to come over 2 weeks before and they can't play any football? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Get your heads around it, people. I just, what are we fighting for? It's not right. I miss football. We all miss football. But this doesn't make sense.
I think the more I see the fear with the players catching something and reading like what Aguero was saying and that, I just don't think it makes sense to put them in that situation. Like, everybody knows we work together. How would you feel if I said you've got to come back to work and the person you sit next to is like less than a metre apart, right? Can you force people to? What if Harry Kane turned around and said, do you know what? I'm not comfortable training and playing football in close contact with other people. Count me out. Does that mean the club should then say, yeah, okay, if you're not comfortable, it's now personal choice. You can come back to work if you want. See, you could in theory work remotely. So it's less of a debate. Harry Kane can't work remotely, right?
Yeah.
It's not FIFA, it's not esports. So can you force somebody to come back? Would you feel comfortable if Spurs forced players to come back? I don't know if I would. If they don't feel comfortable, he's got 3 little ones, isn't he? He's got at least 2 or 3 little ones.
Oh, by the way, Harry Kane would be first at the training ground. just to be very clear, Harry Kane will sell his kids and his wife and go and train.
Yeah.
I don't quite mean that, but you know what I'm saying. No, I think if any players didn't feel comfortable, then I don't see how you can enforce it. And obviously there's a lot of, so take the Brighton example in terms of another player's got the virus. So there's been a lot of people jumping on going, you're making it up in terms of, you're just trying to avoid playing. I don't think that's the case. Brighton have been quite vocal in saying, they don't want to lose this home advantage of home games and stuff like that. And it goes back to what I said. It might not be the clubs. It could be the players. Think of the Brighton players who are going to lose 40% of their wages next season if they get relegated, for example.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's not in the interest of the footballers, particularly really for the 3 that are just outside the relegation zone at the moment. So that's what Brighton, Watford, and who's the other team who's just outside?
West Ham.
And West Ham.
West Ham.
It's for those 3 clubs. It's really not in the interest of players to go back, because if it ends up being voided and teams do get relegated, those 3 ain't going down.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Villa have obviously got a game in hand, but if it comes on points average, I think Villa would still go down, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I think if we void the season, there's every reason to say we shouldn't relegate teams. I agree with that. But if we finish the season, we should relegate the teams. That's exactly where I'm at.
Agreed. So we're ticking along slowly towards a release of lockdown. I think by the end, the country's coming out of lockdown by the end of June. That's less of a concern for me.
Do we think that's right? No.
Yeah, I'm like I probably over the entire bank holiday weekend, I'm just trying to think now. I probably went out twice to pick up bits and pieces. I'm still, every time I do leave the house, I'm surprised how many people are actually out. So I think end of June is okay for releasing lockdown slowly and surely, but for essential stuff. Like go to work, go to the shops, go home. Don't just doss around on street corners for the sake of it, or just go around to your mates just because you want to. If you don't need to, don't. But I do think by the end of June, coming out of lockdown for the purposes of work and that kind of thing, probably be okay.
I still don't know the clarity on last night. Like I haven't seen my mum and dad since lockdown. I don't know if that's allowed or not. Is it?
No. You see, I think yesterday you're allowed to increase.
But I can wave at them in a park. Is that right?
Yeah. You can spend longer in park within your family group or something like that. Yeah.
And I can go and play golf with my wife.
Yeah.
I don't suppose she'd be interested in that, but just to clarify.
Yeah.
I don't get it, mate.
Well, we'll get a 50-page report later on today, so we'll get a.
I hope it's written better than the way it was spoken. Bloody hell.
Boris. I do love a bit of Boris. He's a comedy show sometimes.
Oh dear. Yeah, let's not go there.
So we've got a few other bits and pieces to cover. We've got our Twitter questions as usual, James, which there's quite a few Champ Man questions. So for those of you that are playing Champ Man FPL, if you are hiding under a rock and didn't see any of the announcements on Twitter or the live stream that Andy and Dave did yesterday, then what are you doing? But there is some real big news in Champ Man FPL. So with fixture changes and postponements and stuff.
Should we do
we'll do that at the end.
Yeah, I was going to say, should we just
we'll do that at the end. So
do the Twitter questions that are not based on that,
correct.
And then we'll come into
we'll
the
come
Champ
back
Man
to
stuff.
it. So there's a lot to cover with that. So before we get into the Twitter questions, I think it's worth giving everybody a little bit of insight into what is happening on the 23rd of May.
The schedule is nearly finalised, is what's happening.
The Premier League is reopened. No, the Premier League is not reopened. Something better than that. So we have what we're now calling Planet FPL 24, which is our 24-hour live stream extravaganza. James and I have been thinking about putting this together for a little while. We got challenged into it, I think, a little bit, or somehow it escalated into a 24-hour live stream that will be feeding on YouTube and more than likely on Facebook as well, because we can do that. We're going to be live.
Can you swear on Facebook?
Yeah, it's just another link that you need to stick in. Yeah, you can.
All right, cool.
We need to, we're just planning the schedule. We're almost finalised with that. But we're going to be live from 6 a.m. on Saturday, the 23rd of May, all the way through till 6 a.m. on the Sunday, with a full 24 hours programmed and scheduled in. We're going to be raising money for NHS-related charities for the coronavirus crisis that has been ongoing. And we'll be looking to try and raise a very good sum of money for that. We've already scheduled in a number of guests. As you'd expect, quite a lot of our correspondents are going to be coming on to give insight into different stuff. Some of our FPL community friends will be joining us. We've got a full Champ Man live show in the middle of the day. For all of those that have been crying out for my Cammy appearance, I will be. I've been looking online, James, for Cammy wigs and moustaches. But the wigs, the wigs are all like Lionel Richie wigs, basically.
That'll do.
Doesn't really do it.
That'll do.
And the tash I'll probably just grow because it only take me about a day.
Just get it and wear it all night long.
Oh dear! So
I'm here all week.
So that's going to be in the middle of the day. Obviously, we have listeners all around the globe. Which means even the time difference running through the night, we've got guests from America, we've got guests from New Zealand, we've got plenty planned for the 23rd. So
there's going to be opportunity for every single person potentially to get on this stream. If you want to, is what Indeed. I'll say on that at the moment.
Yeah, well, audience participation will be encouraged. So We've got a lot to do. I know it's going to be a full 24 hours. It's going to be difficult for people to plan their days and what have you. So in the coming days and week, we'll be releasing a schedule of who's on at what time. If there's particular guests that you want to tune into, then you can get your licenses from your missus or your other half, Mister. That you're going to be tuning into the Planet FPL 24 live stream on that day. James and I are going to get through a few beers and a few Red Bulls and a few black coffees.
I'm not drinking Red Bulls, mate.
No?
No, it make me sick. It's an awful drink, man.
It is disgusting, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And
are you actually, don't drink that because the smell's going to...
I don't.
Oh, it just makes me think of Jaeger bombs, man. It reminds me of a happier time.
And Red Bull's not actually even the worst. The Monster stuff.
It's rough as well.
And why do they sell... I've never figured out is why do they sell that in 500ml cans? Like, I can drink quarter. Well, I need 3 or 4 sips and then I'm like, I don't need the rest of this. At least Red Bull comes in small cans.
I think it's to justify the ridiculous cost of them.
Yeah, crazy. So the live stream is coming, the 24-hour live stream on Bank Holiday weekend in a couple of weeks. So do stay tuned on Twitter and everywhere for the schedule as it comes out because we're going to appreciate all the support we can get with that and have a lot of fun over the day.
Cool. Let's do some cues, mate. Let's have a laugh.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with Ian A. Davies. Is it unfair to question Brighton over the 3 sick players? Of course it is.
Yeah, 100%. There's no way in the world I believe that's being made up. No way. They don't need to. They can stand their ground and fight their corner without making stuff up. I don't for a second believe that is made up. Like I said, I'm sure the first question would be, in fact, there's no way they could say someone's got it and not have to submit who it is to the Premier League. I'm 99% sure of that. So, all right, we can tell a player to go and hide for 2 weeks, make up some random reserve player. No, I don't believe that's the case. Brighton have not come out and said, we won't finish this season 100%. They want to fight for basically, all Brighton really feels like they've fought for is they want the games played at the Amex, their designated home games. Whether there's any worthwhile in that, it would all be us hypothesizing in terms of if there's still any advantage or not behind closed doors. I've used the example before saying, perhaps not in a new stadium, but Alderweireld and Vertonghen used to use the stanchion pillars that held the East Stand up as a marker for their offside line. So something sight lines in stadiums can help, but I don't know if there's still any advantage in that or not.
I would add, to be honest, in terms of players having coronavirus, I think it is unfair to question Brighton. That's not to say that I trust football clubs. So if my friend Karen Brady or the West Ham board came out with something along the lines of, if we restart the season, we would lose £50 million or anything kind of financial and contractual, I wouldn't necessarily trust what comes out of their mouths. But I think from a health and sickness point of view, I think it's a little bit harsh to think that they could make that.
One of the things that I think is the responsibility of the Premier League, rather than actually the clubs, is a little bit of clarity in terms of what's the priority here. Because I think for the less sort of into the detail, a lot of people just think playing football is about greed. I don't think it's just about greed. I think for even some Premier League clubs, they need football to restart. Steve Parish at Crystal Palace has been very vocal about it, haven't they? Think about Palace when we've had McTavius on and the amount of times we spoke to him and said, you don't really spend money on players, do you? And they're not going to when it comes back either. They do have some quite high earners, though, Crystal Palace. So I think clubs like that really do need football to come back. I think that's genuine. Yes, it's part financial, but I think Parish is obviously really going down the route of saying, in terms of the longevity of the game, as well, if you think about it, Championship and below is not going to restart if the Premier League doesn't restart, right?
No.
So I think there is, from that point of view, there is a kind of a duty of care, if you will. It seems like the really wrong terms to use when we're thinking about players in this situation. But the Premier League feels a duty for the whole of the football pyramid in England to get back to football because the rest can't. We've seen Gary Neville say at the weekend, he is 99% sure that League One and League Two is done. Now, Gary Neville, for those who just think he's a pundit on Sky Sports, is like joint chairman of Salford in League Two. He's in the detail. He knows what's going on.
Yep.
He thinks that season is finished. They need clarity in terms of what's happening. Are they going back to start a new football season in August or September? He can't see this one finishing from the testing point of view. And so if we, for example, if we're saying as well, it's not safe maybe for, I used the Molineux, I think it's probably a stadium that wouldn't get used in terms of the fact the corners aren't filled in and stuff like that. Then how are Salford going to host a home game safely, etc.?
It'll be very difficult. You're right.
So, yeah, lots of questions. I wonder if it's, I'm just going to throw it out there now. If potential of next season is going to be behind closed doors and potentially at neutral venues, should we just make it 19 games? Because at that point, there is no benefit of playing home and away, is there? Should it just be 19 games?
Maybe. If they're all neutral venues, then yeah, potentially.
Or 21 games if it's 22 teams.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, potentially. Our friend Brad J at FPL _mindset also asked how ridiculous the conspiracy theory stuff is with Brighton, and yeah, of course we've addressed that. Our friend Amber Redmond. Amber, how are you? What's the worst message you've mistakenly sent to the wrong person, or tweet you've liked by mistake?
Not a tweet I've liked. Amber, you should have saved that question for someone else, girl. I once spent a night at another woman's house. This is going back to when I was 18. Yeah. Actually, it wasn't another woman's house. It was upstairs in a pub, actually. And nothing happened, but I stayed over. And I left, and I sent a message saying that was good fun, and sent it to my current girlfriend at the time, and was on my way round there. That was highly amusing. And no, she never saw the message because I went straight round there and managed to get hold of a Nokia 3310. That's genuinely a true story, I swear. Yeah, blinding. So that was shitting myself about that.
The one thing that comes to mind once is I would have been similar. I think I was 22. I feel like I'd moved home from uni at the time. I remember being out on the piss, got a girl's phone number. The next day, message just to say, how's it going? Got a reply, who's this? And rang number, it was a bloke. So I would have been too drunk. I was that drunk that I'd put the number into my phone incorrectly. So that was gone. That was a complete, must have been 22, 23 at the time. I remember I was at my mum and dad's after moving home from uni. That was pretty bizarro. I was like, okay, that's the end of this conversation.
the best bit is the girl that I was with, and it was fairly long term. I was with her a couple of years, from like 17 to 19. So I'm bummed around there. I was around there in about 20 minutes or so. And the mum, who was a bit nuts, she answered the door and she didn't even say hello. She just staring at me. I was like, I'm done. I'm waiting for the dad to come to the door with a baseball bat or something. I walked in, and it was all like really quiet, and I think I'm about to get killed here. And I can see her phone on the side. And I've had to give it a couple of minutes or so, and then I've managed to get hold of it. And I can see, you remember the old Nokias? You used to have the little picture, one message received, and I could see it, and it was my message.
Oh, you're saved.
Blinded.
Saved. We've got Angus McPhail at Angus81. If you were a foreign billionaire and decided to buy a football club in England, who would you be realistically looking to purchase?
I think it depends what you want to do with it, right? So, I mean, Newcastle's a great buy, really, in terms of size of club. Yeah. They obviously, Newcastle need things like they need a new training ground and stuff. They can obviously do the Gallagher ends to make it match up to the gods, you know, how high it is, and take it up to around about 60,000, I think, which is enough, probably. It depends. Do you want to come in and have everything ready for you and you want to try and win things instantly? In which case, genuinely, I can't think of a better example than Tottenham in terms of the stadium, the training grounds, everything infrastructure-wise is ready. It just doesn't have the power to be able to compete. Now, if it had the financial power and you want to win things instantly, then I think there would be no better case than Tottenham. Then if you want to build it up from not necessarily scratch, but in terms of knowing it has the potential in terms of fan base, but it needs things done to it, like the stadium, the training ground. And if you're in it for a 10 to 20 year project or so, then probably someone like Leeds.
Leeds in a decent place. Nottingham Forest maybe are also...
Nottingham Forest not big enough. I know we're saying
Sheffield Wednesday.
I know we're looking to say Nottingham Forest will potentially look to go up to 38,000 capacity, but I think the way football's changed since Leeds were last in the Premier League, if they got back and they were fighting for the title, Leeds is the sort of club that could regularly push towards 60,000 crowds, and then you're talking one of the biggest in the country.
Sheffield Wednesday, not so much.
Maybe. I'd probably put Wednesday higher than Forest, actually.
Okay. I mean, I saw our friend Tom Cantor, who got the assist the other week, managed to, I'm pretty sure he won the Champions League with Barnet in Football Manager.
He did, yeah. I saw that.
So that'll be it. That'll be the one. I'll buy Barnet, and it will take me 30 years, but that's the one. If I was a foreign billionaire, because I just can't be asked to travel far from my house, and the stadium's only, 20 minutes away. So
there is that. You could buy a very small club like that, and your ambition might be to get it to the Championship.
Because the reality is, buying a Spurs is going to cost a premium because everything's already kind of sort of there and done. And I like the climb. I like the climb, so I would rather buy something small if it was me personally.
But that's what I mean. Depends what you want, right? So if Spurs did get bought for 2 billion, and people might laugh at that valuation, but the club somebody did an investigation, didn't they? A couple of weeks back, they released it from the at the end of sort of summer 2019, and they valued Tottenham at 2.5 billion. Now, if you're going to spend that sort of money to buy the club, you are not buying that football club to make it top four. You're buying that football club to try and make it the biggest club in the world. That's it.
Yeah.
So you would want the immediate successes there.
Becomes very expensive for people, even if you are a multi-billionaire, to buy these kind of stadiums. Chico Fernandez, I think we can answer this one fairly quickly. Has been tuned out for several weeks, but do you think they will play Premier League matches this summer?
I think
so.
I think that this season is going to restart, and I think it won't finish.
James, a bold prediction there. Bold prediction. I don't think there'll be football this summer. I think there's too many ifs and buts at the moment. And I'm not 100% though.
I think they're going to attempt it. I really think it's going to attempt, unless if we've got that position where perhaps Sky are reporting now that the majority of the bottom half teams want this scrapped. And we've heard of clubs like Palace, I think Palace are in the 11th or so at the moment. They obviously want to play. But I think if you've got a position where it's 8 clubs or so who are demanding that there's no relegation, you've got a massive problem. Yeah. How do you find the terms to restart?
And in line with that, Scott Gaskell's asked a question as well, who wants to know what your thoughts are, my thoughts are on teams refusing to play at neutral grounds, and are there any potential solutions?
See, the thing is, you're changing the rules mid-competition, aren't you? I think some clubs have got more home games left than others. So how do you weight it fairly? That's part of the problem, isn't it? But I don't know if there's any advantage in even still playing at home anyway.
No.
Any advantages must be
no stadium.
Minor.
I think clubs should just be forced to play at neutral grounds. It's not like you or me are going to be going to watch the games.
The advantage is not the arena. The advantage is the crowd. I truly believe that. Whether that's at Old Trafford or at Bournemouth, the home crowd can have a real impact in terms of what happens during a football match. The intensity that's played at, everything. So I think it's the crowd more than the arena has the impact on that.
Mike D. Bristol on Twitter. Mike Day. How are you, Mike? Which strong transfer rumours from the past do you wish had come true for Spurs or West Ham, obviously, for me? Was there ever a rumour that you
Oh,
thought?
Spurs have had loads. I mean, it became regular laughing stock with Spurs in the mid-90s about
It's bloody laughing stock for us now, West Ham. I think this.
Spurs apparently tried to buy Rivaldo, didn't they, in the mid-noughties? And Rivaldo supposedly even wrote a letter to Tottenham to thank them for their interest. I think the year earlier, Spurs were strongly linked with Morientes when he was still at Real Madrid a few years before he went to Liverpool. The two I remember is in the 90s, a couple of months before, we should have mentioned this on the Thursday throwback we did on Alan Sugar, was before Chelsea paid roughly 5 million for Zola, Spurs got offered him for about 3.5 million 2 or 3 months earlier, and Sugar thought it was too much. I mean, believe that. And at Juninho, Spurs was supposedly really strongly going for in that summer when Middlesbrough went down in '97, and he didn't want to play for another English club. And I think Atletico Madrid well outbid Spurs in the end anyway. So I think looking back, those would have been quite exciting signings. The ones now that it's so hyped up, I really don't take too much notice of the rumours. There's certain people on Twitter, etc., you can begin to trust once they've got the news. Otherwise, I can't think there's too many now where it's fallen through at the last minute. Like, say, Moutinho, I know, was at Spurs training ground in 2013 and they couldn't get the deal agreed in time. But there's not too many examples of that sort of thing happening now, I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like with West Ham, this question would be better phrased as, which rumours do you wish hadn't come true? Because we get linked with a lot of players. I think if I could criticise the club, one of the real big criticisms is transfer strategies. It's never really, I don't ever feel like there is a long-term plan that we're working towards. We go and find individual players for individual positions from individual clubs. We'll generally pay over the odds. I can understand a little bit around that being Premier League, and we do have money like top 20 European in terms of income coming in. So people will want more money from you if they know you've got more money. But I never feel like there's a real strategy. I mean, we either go into Europe and we pay 40 or 50 like we have with Anderson and Haller up front for players that maybe aren't fully proven. And then we go and pick up, historically, we've picked up so many journeymen along the way, the likes of John Hartson, Freddie Ljungberg, Ian Wright, all end up, people come and see out their last couple of years of their career.
Retirement home, Jack Wilshere.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So you can't, I mean, all of those players, maybe Jack Wilshere not included because he hasn't played, but the likes of John Hartson was more, a bit more in his peak, but Freddie Ljungberg and Ian Wright and all of these guys, they're coming to us at the end of their careers, not at their peak. And none of them are bad players. And I'm sure they've all got something to give, but you can't build a future strategy on 29, 30, 31, 32-year-old players. And we do get linked with journeymen, and it's those rumours that really irritate me. It's like, why are we going to go and pick up a 30-year-old just because he's won 3 titles at Man City? Like, have a bit more.
Are you naming Pablo Zabaleta specifically there, mate?
No, but I mean, we would look. Put it this way: Company left Man City. It wouldn't surprise me if we went and said, "Here, Vincent Company, we'll give you 150 grand a week for 3 years." Like, come on, it's not. It's illogical because he's so late in his career. But we'll overpay for journeymen and we'll overpay for semi-proven talent, and that irritates me more than. Because if I listen to every rumour that we get linked with, I mean, there's like dozens in the summer, dozens.
There's cases for and against, just briefly on buying and not buying experienced players. Just to clarify, Hartson was young when you bought him, mate.
Yeah,
24,
Hartson's
25.
Different. We got good years out of
Spurs evolved into a club that began to challenge because they changed their transfer ethos from being a few years earlier in sort of 01, getting back players like Sheringham and buying Poyet, who were just, all right, they were going to make the team better, but you're going to have to replace them in 2 years as well. It just wasn't helping the long-term profile of the football club. And it changed when they started buying young British talent, the Jermaine Defoes, Michael Carricks, Michael Dawsons, Paul Robinsons. That's what began to change Spurs for the better. But then I always highlight that that Edgar Davids came in at basically the end of his career and changed the mentality of a lot of those inexperienced players. By, he'd been there, done it, won the lot. And I think that really pushed Spurs to begin to actually challenge for the top four and not just be an attractive football side who would lose the majority of away games. He changed the mentality to make them start to become winners. So, someone like Zabaletta's been there, done it, got the T-shirt, mate. I don't think that's necessarily a bad signing.
No,
but I agree. In terms of West Ham trying to be someone that's going to qualify regularly for Europe, you need to go and make stars, not buy stars. And I even think Tottenham are in that boat at the moment.
It's more, what's our philosophy? And let's buy players that fit the philosophy rather than we need a right back. Let's go and buy a right back. Let's rattle through a couple more of these, James, because we can then get into the Champ Man chat. There's a few Champ Man questions, obviously. And some of these are quite quick. Shiva FPL, you've already answered this on Twitter, but for the audio listening folk, will there be any section for Bundesliga fantasy? Reply from Planet FPL, James, no.
No, I can say that our friends Brandon and Josh, How Cheaters, I think they've done a podcast on it last night. But no intention from me. And I tell you why, because I'm not going to be watching much of it. So I'd actually be doing you a disservice by discussing it in detail, because I'd be blagging it.
I'm just not interested at all. Now, Steve Smith, I'm hoping you can settle a marital argument. If you were looking for your slippers and could only find one, I'm in the market for a new pair, actually, James. Would you walk around with one slipper on without a care in the world, or would you just leave both off and walk around in your socks just irritated all day?
You wouldn't wear one, would you? What's the point in that?
Yeah, I wouldn't wear. I'd possibly wear the one for the 2 or 3 minutes that I'd bother spending looking for the other one.
Why would you even do that? Why would you walk around uncomfortable looking for the other one?
It's not uncomfortable. It's fine. But then because then at least I know where one is.
It's just going to make you more annoyed that you haven't got the other one by wearing one.
I don't care that much about my slippers, mate. I don't care enough.
Mentality-wise, just accepting that you've got none is the best way to go.
His missus wears
like chocolate in the house. Don't have chocolate in the house at the moment. If it's not in the house, you can't eat it, right? If it's in the house, it's getting eaten all day long.
That is true. We've got Richard Roman, quite a big question here. How can the league save League One and League Two clubs from going out of business? And possibly some championship clubs too. The bubble is about to burst.
I don't know. I haven't got a good answer for this. I obviously spoke last week about the idea of streaming games and making revenue from that, be it from sales of games or sponsorship. But if there's no football, I don't have a good answer for anybody. So I realise when I say that going back and playing football is wrong and that some clubs are going to die, which is the worst thing imaginable, I know what I'm saying. And I know how bad that is and how it looks for those clubs. I haven't got a good answer.
So there is an argument to say that survival of the fittest, and if a club in League Two goes bust, let them go bust, because they weren't run effectively and efficiently to run as an operating business, and so why should we bail them out? And the reason people use examples like that is the airline industry now, right? The airline industry is on its knees. Now the government stepped in and will bail out. In America, they have particularly bail out the airline industry by just giving them money. Where do you draw the line at which industries do get bailed out and which don't? Now, football for me takes a little bit of a separate situation because they have so much community work that they do, and it spreads into youth football, women's football, and so on. So they're as much a part of the community in the way that public services like police and hospitals and ambulances and all that kind of stuff are, not to that level, but they are part of the fabric of society. Whereas a business is a business and someone else will take that vacuum. So if you start bailing out clubs, then they stop being motivated to be successful in their own right. And also you have clubs that are in the conference and the football pyramid who are well run. So if you're a club in the top 5 of the conference, you run well, you run efficiently, You've been able to ride it out because you've got your finances in order, and the club in the bottom 5 of League Two goes bust. Well, you've done everything right, they've done everything wrong, but yet they're going to get bailed out. So it disincentivizes people from doing things the right way. But also, football clubs are not businesses. They are a part of the community. So there's arguments on both sides. I think if they make money available to clubs to bail them out, they've got to do something similar for clubs that don't necessarily need it, but try and level out the playing field as much as possible.
It's got to come joint from the Premier League in some way, basically. It can't be, this is the whole thing we discussed with Bury, with people like, why don't Man City or Man United just say Bury? But then now if they'd done that, they'd now be in a position where where people are saying the same thing. Why don't Man City or Man United just say Macclesfield Town, for example? So it becomes a never ending if you rely on individual clubs. It has to come from the Premier League. And I don't know if that's kind of written off loans in some way, that it's paid back in such small installments over, I don't know, 50 or 100 years or something, depending on the case. Or do you just give them all, I don't know, do you go to every League Two club and go, okay, there's 3 million each? Is that enough to keep a football club surviving for 3 months or so? I don't know if it is or it isn't. And I guess different clubs are going to have different circumstances. Like we said in the past, you know, Bradford City and Accrington Stanley are at similar levels. They're completely different football cases. But then they're all going to be different. So Bradford will get far more fans in the ground than an Accrington Stanley. But then Bradford are obviously also paying far higher wages than Accrington Stanley. Yeah. So it's going to be relative to what I think percentage of wages versus turnover is where you're going to be at. And those that have managed that best are the clubs that have got the best chance of surviving. There are certainly some clubs, I think Rochdale, forgive me if I've got this wrong, I'm sure Rochdale is a case that I've seen mentioned where 90% of their turnover goes on wages, which...
Wow.
That's... Wow. Yeah, there isn't an answer to fix that other than being saved from outside, really.
In our business, it's 50%. 50% of overheads are made up of payroll.
Personally, I prefer it was more like 60 or 70 such.
It's actually, thinking about it, it is actually closer to 60%, 65%.
Sorry, more like 70 or 80 such.
Yeah, there we go. Actually, that's a little plug. One of the segments that we're looking to do on the live show, whilst you prep for the Champ Man, is an Ask Suj, unlike it was similar to James's Ask James, but I want to make it, I don't know, business, marketing focus, finance focus. So we can look at the finances of some footy clubs if you want. So we'll release more information about that when we get closer to talking about the schedule for the live show, the 24-hour live stream, sorry. Apart from that, we've only got one other question, James, that we need to deal with on Twitter, but we have already dealt with. So I'll give the question a bit of airtime, but we've already spoken about it. This is from our friend FPL Canada. Do you think it'll be a case of teams saying, let's get this season done and concentrate on next season? What percentage of fans really care now that everything has been dealt with? And I think we've spoken about that at length at the start of the show.
The only interesting thing really to perhaps just add on slightly there is what percentage of fans want it or don't want it. I can't answer that. No. Even a Twitter vote is probably going to be sided by who follows that account and what their opinion is, for example. So I don't know if there's accurate answers for that. I mean, there are correspondents we've got. I know some who would just be like absolutely desperate to get football back and up and running, but then partly because I think they want to go back because they miss the day-to-day of going and supporting their club. And there are others who are just like, you can't go back and play football. Don't care. I don't think there's many supporters of the top 20 Premier League clubs. All right, let me put it a different way. I think there's more that don't give a shit than do give a shit. If you were to separate the fan bases of all 20 and you polled them all equally, I think there's more that don't give a shit about what happens next than do. That could be quite important.
Agreed. I agree with you on that for sure, James. And that's our Twitter questions, other than the Champ Manager questions. And all the Champ Manager questions basically say, what are you going to do about the Man United Middlesbrough blank? So let's give a quick cheerio to all the non-Champ Manager FPL playing
Thanks for tuning in.
If you are switching off now, then off you go. However, James is being forced into playing his wild card and might implode in a minute. So I'd stay tuned just for the entertainment value. Because we're about to go into game week 12, and then after that we've got game week 13, correct?
No, we're about to go
into game week
13.
Finished game week 12, we're about to go into game week 13, so we get my numbers right. And Manchester United and Middlesbrough, who are the top two in the league right now. And
two clubs with the most ownership as well, by the way.
Yeah, most people have been working towards 5. Some people have 6 across the two clubs. This is like Liverpool and kind of Man City coverage was a little bit less, but like, yeah. And they had a fixture next week. They're playing each other, followed by game week 14. And then there was a double game week in game week 15. But that fixture in 13 is off.
Well, that's the biggest immediate problem that everybody needs to make a decision on. So,
James, you can just sell Ruud van Nistelrooy. If you are Ruud van Nistelrooy, you owner, they could just sell him and get Thierry Henry like you, can't they?
Well, we spoke yesterday, obviously offline.
Yeah.
And although I was looking at 6 if the game was called off, my immediate instinct was to look at that as a -8.
7 if you include Henry.
No, I was including Henry as 6. I'm now 7 with no Solano.
Right,
and
is he injured?
think that is absolutely a tipping point where I've gone, hang on a minute. And if you think of the amount of money I've got tied up in these players, I've got Van Nistelrooy and Henry, etc. I wouldn't particularly want to sell either. So what am I doing? Boxic is my other forward. So as it stands now, I haven't got a single forward. I've got Alan Johnson, who's the highest scoring player in the game at the moment, the midfielder, Middlesbrough as well. And I've got double United defensive plus Solano. So I'm killed. I'm absolutely killed. Of my available, what's that leave me with? 8 players. In fact, I tell a lie because Sereni's suspended as well. So I am actually down to 8.
Wow.
So, although I'd still have a playing goalkeeper, although I think Keller might lose his place at any spot. So, and I've got people like Finidi George who could be rotated at any time, right? So,
could be.
But on further
disastrous.
analysis, I could be down to if I just left it as dead as bust, I could rock out with like 5 players. So I think at that point I've had to go. No, I've got to do something. So there are 2 immediate options to deal with the immediate problem. I think the first thing I would say is if you've got, for whatever reason, you've only got 3 between Manchester United and Middlesbrough, I would try and avoid a chip. Even if you're really tied into Van Nistelrooy, Veron and Johnston money, for example. Is that you? Is that what you've got?
For the listeners, I just put my hand up on YouTube. I have Ruud van Nistelrooy, Laurent Blanc and Adam Johnson. That's it.
I think I wouldn't do anything in your case.
Yeah, I'm not planning to be honest with you.
I would even have a further look and consider that as your bench this week. Because one of the things I'm strongly considering is keeping 3 of these guys on a wild card. So the immediate
I have a little advantage there, James. I stuck with Scowcroft. I rolled my transfer last week, so stuck with Scowcroft and also Jason Ewell. But this week I can get rid of Littmanen, and I can also get rid of Harry Kewell, who is out. And
Harry Kewell might be back.
Yeah, if I might not need to get rid of Harry Kewell. If I don't need to get rid of Harry Kewell, then I might move Jason Ewell and Yuri Littmanen, and I'll still be able to field a full 11.
Yeah, Littmanen's got to go. Like, get that into anything that's playing. So you're probably ignoring James Beattie now, but, take a hit to fix it up. That's the best thing to do. I think the one that's bothered me is I'd obviously taken hits to get some of these guys in. I've just taken a -8 to get
very difficult
Sylvester Johnston and Boxic in. I'm like,
it's painful.
Jesus. And I'm annoyed at myself because although it feels like nobody had particularly spotted it, and I'm sure 1 or 2 probably did and kept it to themselves, I feel like it's something I should have, with my strategizing, clocked it and realized it could be an issue that was incoming, but it just completely went past me. So the immediate decision for people to make is, I think, How do you deal with game week 13? I think if you've got
Can
five
I
or
ask you a
six...
question, James?
Go on.
You've got this Rangers game for Manchester United is midweek.
Yeah.
It's on Wednesday the 21st. So why have they called off the Saturday game?
So the Man United Rangers game is actually on the Tuesday.
Right.
And the Middlesbrough Man United game had been scheduled for the Monday night game.
Okay. So the on Ben Credin's spreadsheet, at the top it's more of an indication than an exact date that it is.
Yes,
right.
Correct.
I understand. Right,
so,
okay. Because I thought it was a Saturday-Wednesday turnaround, which would have been okay.
No, so, I mean, you would think they would just move Middlesbrough Man United back to the Saturday, wouldn't you? But no. I mean, how did that... You know, the TV companies wouldn't even let it move to a Monday night now anyway, knowing that United were going to play a Champions League game, right? So
yeah, exactly.
But hey, it's a computer game, right?
Yeah.
So the immediate decision is, what do you do? How do you cover it off? I think if you've got 5 or more from Middlesbrough Man United, you're now looking at a problem. I think anything under that, I would try and manoeuvre it with transfers rather than chips. That's my personal opinion. So I think in your case, Suj, you're basically missing, 4 if you include Littmanen, is that right?
4 if I include Littmanen, and our friend Harry Kewell is fit. Otherwise, you're losing 5.
I think you can manoeuvre that.
Oh, yeah. With 2 free transfers, of course I can. Easy.
Have you got 2 frees as well?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I rolled last week.
Even consider making a free transfers if you've for -4, and leave the United Middlesbrough guys on the bench and just hope they all 11 play. I think that's fair strategy. It depends
what you've got in your squad. That's what I'm going to do.
That's fine. My case, missing 8, or it's 7 really, because I've still obviously got another goalkeeper. I think I've got to chip. I have to. So the immediate decision is, do you free hit now? And then are you perhaps wildcarding in 14 to bench boost in 15 when we think we're going to have all these doubles? Or what do you do if you haven't got a wild card? Because the alternative is, and that's what I'm thinking, is to wild card. And the reason I want a wild card rather than free hit now than build to 15, one, I obviously could free hit now and then wild card 14 and bench boost 15. The reason I want to free hit 15 rather than now, essentially, is the teams that are going to play in 15 don't hold a huge amount of interest to me beyond what happens in that game week for them. So yes, it is going to be the best week to bench boost. I think that's clear. But I also don't want to walk out with a squad full of all these players walking into some brutal fixtures afterwards. So we know, for example, Aston Villa's one that's decent in terms of their run afterwards. We know that they're going to double. Southampton follow it with like Middlesbrough away, Liverpool at home. No, you're right. No, thanks very much. Leicester are likely to double. They follow it with Fulham away, Man United away. If it's Leicester, then it's Blackburn.
And then Bolton away as well.
They've got Leeds away, Fulham away. The one that Villa's okay in terms of a fixture run, especially after. But then you've got,
I think,
their best asset, Angel's unavailable.
Just to jump in, you said Blackburn follow with Leeds away, but I think that's been called off.
Yes, sorry. So, yeah. I mean, Leeds obviously could have their game week 15 fixture and their game week 16 fixture off anyway. So Blackburn could walk into no fixture.
Yeah.
We will know that before the deadline. Certainly before the game week 14 deadline, sorry. So when you look at those teams, the teams that could potentially double, so we know it's Aston Villa versus Southampton and Leicester versus Blackburn. They're the 4 that we definitely know. The other ones, even like Chelsea, who look really attractive for that game week, it's Man United away and Middlesbrough away afterwards and Tottenham away beforehand. And they're all 4 away from home. So I'm not sure that I want to bench boost with these players and forget about the fixtures that are coming afterwards. So I think for me, in my circumstance, and everybody's will be different, is just hammer into the best 11 I can possibly get for a game week 15 free hit. And I still think that's quite an aggressive move. And also, by going that way, I can, in the back of my mind, having obviously already used the wild card now, is look at the teams that will play in game week 22 if the maximum of 12 teams doubling double. That's the maximum we can get. It's 5 or 6 is the maximum. Now, if that's the case, I'd say if we get 4 games that will have a double, so 8 teams, 100% this will be the biggest double game week. So from a bench boost perspective, the advice from our perspective would have always been, yeah, do it. But guess where this is different to real FPL? Who are the teams that are most commonly going to double in double game weeks? The best teams, because of cup ties. And most of the best teams are not going to double in game week 15, in my opinion. So the eight teams we'd be left with in game week 22, which is suddenly going to become a big blank game week, are Liverpool and Arsenal, Man United and Ipswich, Leeds, West Ham, Fulham, Newcastle. Now, other than West Ham, I'm quite interested in the assets from all those clubs. There's a possibility as well. Tottenham at the moment is kind of either or in terms of whether it will happen. If you add Tottenham into that mix as well and they don't double in 15, then I've really got next to no interest in having a squad of those players going into game week 16 afterwards.
Correct. I'm fully with you. I mean, I may free hit in game week 15 as well, based on how many of my team have doubles and don't have doubles. Yeah, the other advantage of working towards 22 for your bench boost is that you've got 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So you've got 5 or 6 transfers there.
Well, you obviously wouldn't bench boost in 22. You need a team, is the point.
Yeah.
You need a team to avoid using that free hit in game week 22.
Yeah. But you've got 5 to 6 weeks to build towards it, and you should know what's happening after the game week 16 cup. 4th round of the League Cup is done and dusted. We've got a bit of European football in between that to kind of figure out, right?
The other thing is, in terms of the teams that will double specifically in 15, even though they're shit teams, a lot of them are attractive. So the 4 that we know currently, Aston Villa would be Everton away and Southampton at home. That's fine. Blackburn would be Southampton away and Leicester at home. That's fine. Leicester would be Sunderland at home and Blackburn away. That's fine. Southampton would be Blackburn at home, Villa away. So they're all okay. They haven't got games against other big sides, for example. Of the teams that still could, so Chelsea would have Liverpool at home and Derby away. Charlton would have Liverpool at home, Derby away. Not so great. Bolton would have Chelsea away, Middlesbrough at home. It's actually okay with the Middlesbrough home game.
Yeah.
Because although Middlesbrough are doing very well in the league, as Luke from Scout would obviously detail, their reputation's quite low. So Bolton would still go and attack them. Chelsea would have Bolton at home, Sunderland away. It's nice. Middlesbrough, Ipswich at home, Bolton away would be great. Sunderland would be Leicester away, Chelsea at home. And Tottenham would be Arsenal away, Everton at home. You'd obviously take the Arsenal points as a bonus, but then still a great home fixture against Everton. And Tottenham have a sustained run of good fixtures afterwards as well, it's worth saying. So Tottenham are one you certainly could invest in if you're looking at, say, the bench boost of 15. But then they're the ones who have the high profile game in terms of Arsenal away in that game week. So I just don't really see where I want these teams afterwards. And of course, because of those things, the fixtures that they have, the guys who have the ownership now, other than Middlesbrough, they've got quite difficult fixtures on that game week. So United are away to Newcastle. Fulham are away. Arsenal have got Tottenham. Yeah. Leeds, obviously, we think now could be postponed. Liverpool are Charlton away. It's not the worst, but it is still an away game. So I feel like I'm actually longer term in terms of my planning. I'm actually more interested as an overall in terms of the teams that won't double in game week 15. Also, you can't plan for it fully. You're not going to know the 100% lineup of game week 15 till game week 14 is passed. So to take you through in terms of how these doubles can happen or not. So as I said, we know Villa, Southampton, Blackburn, Leicester will definitely have a game week 15 double. Bolton and Middlesbrough will be a double if Manchester United beat Middlesbrough in the League Cup. Now, I'd suggest to you straight away going to think that's likely. It's at Middlesbrough, and Manchester United will likely rotate players because it's the League Cup. So I'd say that's a 50-50. If Middlesbrough double, they're a brilliant one for the double game week. Now, you're not going to know that until after game week 14. So what's your prep for it? Derby and Charlton will go ahead in double game week 15. If Preston beat Derby or if Ipswich beat Manchester City. Now, Manchester City are obviously a Division 2 side, or Division 1 technically, as a Preston. So that could happen. But again, the Ipswich fixture wouldn't be till game week 14. So again, 100% you can't know if Derby and Charlton will go ahead, and that's actually dependent on Ipswich. Tottenham and Everton will go ahead if West Ham beat Everton or if Leeds beat Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
So quite possible. West Ham beat Villa in the League Cup in the previous round, played quite a strong side. You would expect Leeds to beat Chelsea at home, but with them still being in Europe and the injuries they've got at the moment, Leeds could heavily rotate as well. And Sunderland and Chelsea will go ahead if Leeds beat Chelsea. So Sunderland, Chelsea, you would think is probably quite likely to go on. And then there's potential doubles afterwards, mainly for Liverpool. Liverpool can have a double game week in 16 if Hull beat Fulham and if Middlesbrough beat Manchester United. And they can also have a double game week in game week 17 if they lose to Walsall in the League Cup, which is obviously very unlikely. Yep. There are so many permutations, and a lot of people will have just listened to what I've said the last 2 minutes and gone, bloody hell, James, what did you say? And that's part of my point. I'll get on the other side of game week 14 and just free hit 15.
Yep. You're going to wild card into 13.
I'm going to wild card now to fix the problem that I've got, and looking at teams beyond game week 15. So I'm obviously looking for the next two fixtures and ignoring 15, then obviously 16 and beyond. So teams that I want to target are obviously Liverpool, because although unlikely, they could have back-to-back doubles 16, 17. There were players there that I like. Robbie Fowler's fit now. Sammy Hippier. There's a load of good budget ones you can have defensively. So I think Liverpool's the only side I might treble up on. I do need to keep some Manchester United and Middlesbrough coverage because we've got some really good fixtures coming up. You know, Middlesbrough have got Villa away. Then the other side of 15, they've got Southampton at home. And there is a possibility they could have a game week 17 double as well. I think it's if the double doesn't happen in 15, it's really complicated. Spurs have a great run of fixtures beyond 15. And I'm actually not so bothered about their double in 15, considering the Arsenal away is the first part of that. Could get completely battered, unfortunately. Ipswich are likely to have a single win game week 15, which is away to Middlesbrough. But they've got a good run of fixtures that's going on for ages. So they've got Villa at home now, Southampton at home. I can skip the Middlesbrough away game, and then I'm back into Everton at home. So I definitely want chunks of that. Leeds I need to avoid because we think that game week 15 is highly likely to be postponed, and game week 16 could be as well.
Yeah.
And I still want bits of Arsenal. Arsenal have obviously got Sunderland at home now. Then it's Fulham away. If you skip the North London derby, it's Bolton away, Ipswich away. It doesn't hold fear because Arsenal really are the second best side on this. So I'm still looking to make the majority of my wild card essentially around probably Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United and Middlesbrough. And there is a chance that none of those clubs will double in 15. The only one of them that can is Middlesbrough. And I'm interested in Tottenham as well because of what's beyond game week 15, not what's actually in it.
Interesting. Just to give you a quick summary of where I'm at, I'm happy with Seaman and Ashley Cole as a defensive double up with Arsenal for now. Serrani's my reserve keeper, but so be it with him. My backline's fairly strong. I've still got Ian Hart, Laurent Blanc, and Melberg and John Arnorisa. I'm comfortable with all of those because they all play week in, week out. Scowcroft, Harry Kewell, Wilcox, who had a nice return again at the weekend. He's good at his price. Solano and who's my fifth mid? Johnston is my fifth midfielder. But Solano's got issues now, right?
Solano's out for like 3 months.
So there's a hole that I can fix very comfortably. And I'll probably end up keeping Harry Kewell because I do like Leeds' fixture, not this game week, but the week after where they got Charlton at home.
He can still return at Leicester if he's
yeah,
fit,
true.
Right?
And Charlton at home, I think by then a lot of players will come away from their Leeds assets. If I hold on to him, it might be a bit of a differential.
You could even end up in a position where you hold on to it, and obviously you don't need to worry about it 15 if you're going to free hit. That's the other thing on Leeds that's perhaps worth mentioning. If it's not 100% that their game week 15 and 16 fixtures are postponed, it is possible that it's just the game week 15 fixture. It's basically dependent on Australian players being called up. Basically, Leeds only having 2 players called up by Australia, and Derby and Blackburn having 1 each. Derby's highly likely, and I think Blackburn probably is as well. But you could even be in a position, again, free hitting 15, where you actually could have nice Leeds home fixtures on either side. But I would suggest that is a huge gamble. Huge gamble, and I would probably avoid taking that route.
Yeah. And up front, Ruud van Nistelrooy, obviously it was a lot of money to tie up if there's a blank, but so be it. And then Jason Ewell and Littmanen. So I can fix the Solano, Littmanen situations, and I've still got a lot of depth across the squad, so I'm fairly comfortable with that.
So have you used your wild card?
Yeah, I used it about 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
You've actually not come out of this too badly.
Mate. Look,
there were some people who...
I stuck with Scowcroft a couple of weeks longer than maybe some did. I stuck with Wilcox still, and both this weekend pushed me to a 67-pointer. So
I know FPL Dougal, who's doing good podcasts as well on the game, he's got 8 out, as of obviously mine. Now, one of them's a goalkeeper, so really it's 7. I've not seen anybody else yet who's got more out than me and him, and I think, therefore, we've got to do something. I just think the biggest issue, I think, to clarify, game week 15 is the best week to use the bench boost. However, I would be extremely concerned with what you're coming back to afterwards. And that's why I'm going to use that game week to free hit. And it just means that, yes, I'm not going to have the best week to use the bench boost. There will be other opportunities where I can probably get to maybe 12 who will double. And I'm just going to have to use the advantage of that then and play the fixtures. So I think it's possible that I could use a bench boost in 16 or 17, if you look at 17, there is a possibility, and it's really small, that Liverpool, Middlesbrough, Newcastle and Tottenham could all double. And Manchester United would have Leicester at home. Now, if it got to that, I think I could use it then. I suspect, however, that won't happen. And I'll probably be using my second wild card to then prepare for my bench boost in the second half of the season, which is probably going to be February-ish rather than right at the end.
I'm with you, James. One of the regular strategies in FPL is wildcard into your bench boost as close as possible. And the problem here is that with the doubles in 15, we're going to have no time to wildcard in 14 because we're not going to know what the fixtures are going to be. So for me, a free hit that gives me 30 players, 22 players, because 11 players playing twice. If I free hit into only double game week players, is better to get 20 free hit and get 22 than bench boost. And I might still only get, I'll have 15, and maybe if half of them double, I'll have 22. But I haven't got the 15 that I really want for my bench boost because I haven't had the luxury of using my wild card before. So for me, I'm really looking at a free hit in 15. If I don't have enough double game week players, and my cutoff there is 22 or 23 matches out of my squad.
The other advice, and we'll probably do this more in terms of next Monday's podcast, because obviously that'll be pre-game week 15, is with the sides that will double in 15 if you free hit, you do not need to cut any corners with them. Essentially, in terms of financially, like the most expensive player you can have is obviously, if Spurs double, would be like a Rebroff or something, Rebroff or Everson. But otherwise, you're looking like Scowcroft at Leicester and everybody else being sub 7 million. You do not need to cut any corners. So you can go, for example, if you take an example like Villa, say you want a Villa defensively, which I think quite a few will want to go down that route, especially as Angel is going to be away for one of the...
That's what I was going to mention. He's got to go to Colombia, right? So
correct,
even getting him doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Correct. So he's going to miss one of the games. He just becomes essentially a single game week player. So if you want to go...
travelled from South America.
If you want to go Villa defensively, I would go... There's only 2 players I would consider. Is Schmeichel as the goalkeeper. If you want to go down that route, it's picking up good save points. I would go Gareth Barry. I wouldn't cut any corners on a Melberg, an Alpi, anything. Gareth Barry's played every minute this season. Yes, he'll cost you a little bit extra, but you will be able to...
What are you going to do with your money?
If that's what you want to do. And so, again, like with Leicester, you're not going to cut corners with like your McAnuffs and Impies. You're going to get Scowcroft. It's like a certainty. It'll be in every free hit team. You don't need to cut the corners to avoid that. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if that game week 15, I wouldn't be surprised if James Scowcroft is the most owned player. I think that's genuinely a possibility.
Last question, James, before we wrap up. When is Sereni due back? Which game week is that?
Sereni's back in 14, I believe.
Okay.
So you can get through this game. Who are your keepers at the moment?
Seaman and Sereni. So I'm fine.
That's perfect. I mean, with them two anyway, I would just play Seaman nearly all the fixtures. So that's fine. Well, Seaman's got the shirt. It's okay. I think it's a problem that could come back.
Only if Sereni doubles for whatever reason by chance, but I don't think that's likely.
No, you might want to look at perhaps further down the line in terms of what you might want as maybe a cheaper keeper alternative once 16, 17 doubles are known. That's up to you. You might decide you want to ditch Seaman for Dudek, for example, if Liverpool double comes around. What the other strong point to make on this is there isn't a right and wrong. This isn't like sometimes with FPL, we've gone, I strongly believe this is the best strategy. I strongly believe the strategy I'm taking is the best strategy for me. If you're in a position where you've already got, say, I don't know, a couple of Leicester, a couple of Chelsea, that kind of thing, and a couple of Spurs, then I think you're in a completely different position and you're far better set up towards that bench boost maybe if you're without your wild card. So it's going to be completely dependent on circumstances. I can't get away from the fixtures that the teams that are double are going to have afterwards in 16, 17 and beyond. I'm not going to want the majority of those players. That's why I'm going to free hit in 15. If you're wondering what my wild card is now, I swear I have not even begun a draft.
But it will be shared at some point.
I do almost know for certain that Van Nistelrooy, Silvestre and Johnston will be my substitutes this week.
There we go, James. That's enough for another pod.
Nice.
We can put a bit of music on the end, somebody, and we will release it to the public. We still have a few shows coming at you this week. Tomorrow, we're going to have a rundown, look at gambling in football and what the FA and Premier League rules are around what players can and can't do and what issues it can.
He's specifically targeted at why perhaps, like, for example, Kieran Trippier got punished last week, Daniel Sturridge a few months back. So it's not so much we've done gambling in football before. This is going to be more what are the rules around players? Is it right that they're getting penalised? Because, I mean, Kieran Trippier is looking at a long ban.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's right. We need to look at that.
And on Wednesday, we have the quiz. An A to Z quiz this week, so it'll be an interesting twist. So do stay tuned for that.
What I'm going to do with that, just to cover briefly, it's going to be 26 questions. It will be like an A to Z Premier League, and what I mean by that is every single answer will represent one letter from the alphabet.
And then on top of that, Thursday, Throwback Thursday, James, what we're going to look back to this week?
We are going to look at the career of Paul Gascoigne.
Gaza, national treasure or legend or not, depending on who you are.
The danger with Gascoigne is trying to keep that to around a half hour, because I think it could very easily be the 24-hour stream.
He's got so many stories in that closet of his. So many dodgy stories with Gaza, but also great ones as well.
Yes.
And in amongst that, Wednesday night, there's a live stream for Champ Man. There'll be an Ask James on Friday and another Champ Man live stream on Saturday as well. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast or the YouTube channel, do make sure you do so that you're notified as soon as we go live or publish any content.
The YouTube account searches about 7 subscribers from 2,000 subs, I think.
Yeah, so who are you 7 people? Hurry up and get it done is all I'll say. And that's it. That's another show. Do stay safe, everybody. Ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everybody. Stay safe and cue the music, man child.